Hi there, and welcome to the Future Makers podcast by MAND. This is where we talk to people from scientific and high-tech organizations with a purpose. I'm Angina Herman, and Aveli Idavain is hiding under the hood to make sure everything runs. Say hi to everyone, Ave.
Hello, everyone.
Today we get to speak with Ilari Henrik Aegerter. Ilari is the general manager of House of Test, a software consulting company here in Switzerland. Welcome, Ilari.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
So, tell us, why does House of Test exist? What's your purpose?
Well, there's a bit of a story behind House of Test. It was not founded in Switzerland initially. House of Test is from Sweden. It was founded in 2008 by good friends of mine that I have met at conferences frequently in the past and that I got to know quite nicely. In the past, I was working for eBay. I was running the testing for Europe from Zurich, and I had a distributed team all across Europe. And in 2015, the organization did a big reorganization, and they wanted to move my post from Zurich to London. But then for private reasons, I decided not to do that. And at that moment, it was clear to me that I wouldn't want to kind of work in big corporations anymore because there is a lot of quite special things happening in big organization, especially in terms of people management. There are large HR departments that have their idea on how things work, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So then it was clear to me that I want to do something on my own because I had my ideas on how you should treat people in professional organizations. And then the question was more, should I build a brand on my own or tap into House of Test, which as a brand I already liked. And then we decided to build another company in Switzerland. It is run by me, so the operational responsibility is with me, with Switzerland. But it already started with the House of Test brand at the very beginning. And that's how it started and gave me the liberty just to build a company the way I think it should be built.
So how should it be built? What's your way? Now I'm curious.
Well, I think there are two types of organizations in general. There are the organizations that believe that employees will try to find any opportunity to trick the organization or just to be lazy or to not do the work. And then they optimize their organizations in terms of that worldview. Then on the other hand, I think there is the general human view that people are generally good, of course with exceptions, but you don't optimize your organizations towards the exceptions. I mean, there are people that don't want to do a good job, but they're a very small minority. And an organization, in my view, should be targeted towards people and believing that they want to do a good job and not try to micromanage or punish them or kind of build up a big punishment structure that then has their sorts of effects on everyone else.
So that's the foundation of House of Test, I suppose, then, trusting in the people that they are trying to do the right thing.
Trusting and giving them responsibility to do the things they should do. I mean, I can give an example in organizations. What often happens, especially in organizations that have their people use their brain. One of the capitals that companies have is the brains of the people. And these people need to be educated and they need to read books and go to conferences and visit courses. Large organizations usually have a very long approval process and you need to have sign-offs and there is no budget for anything. And we just turned that completely around at House of Test. So people basically do whatever they want. And they go through a self-approval process within House of Test.
What does it look like?
Oh, okay. So what we currently have in Switzerland is that every single employee has a virtual budget of 10,000 Swiss francs every year. And within that range, they can act completely independently of my approval or anything. And so basically they need to answer 3 questions for themselves. The first question is, does what I want to do or read or buy, does it advance me professionally? Then the second question is it in the wider interest of House of Test? So anything in our context, basically anything that is testing related, that's technology related, that's software development related, but also anything that's related to human interaction and conflict resolution and kind of dealing with people, that's within the scope, of course. And then let's say a bungee jumping course that would not qualify. But basically, it's not me making that assessment. Every single person within the organization makes their own assessment. And then the third one is that is there a balance between the cost and and benefit from that. So basically, let's say going for a 1-day workshop, flying to Melbourne in Australia, that wouldn't qualify very much into kind of cost and value benefit. So basically, they answer these 3 questions for themselves, and if they can answer for themselves that yes, then they can actually just do it, and they charge it on the company credit card, and there they go. We also keep all the activities of the people public within the organization, so everyone can check what everyone else is doing. This is more to give ideas for other people as well, because sometimes people don't tell everyone what they're doing, so people can just check and see, and if they're interested in something what someone else does, they can also tap into that. Now, if the budget is reached at 10,000, from then on, it's just a quick check-in with me, and my usual answer is yes, and I basically approve the request.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just about to ask what's the level of transparency. So it goes hand in hand with that. I mean, you say it's about inspiration, but I guess social control is an element there as well. Like you can't screw over the rest of the company because they're going to find out about it. Or do you think that is a factor in the transparency?
Actually not. It was not from the very beginning when I implemented the system. And now we've been going on with that system for the past 9 years. I had to interfere actually only once in the whole time. So there was a little bit of a mismatch between the cost and benefit of something. But then it was more a discussion. And if people had convinced me that, okay, no, this is really something important, I would have said, okay, then that's fine. But basically it was more in a conversation that we actually then came to, okay, that might a little bit be an overreach of the whole thing. But it's quite surprising that if you treat people with respect and confidence, then they will act like that. So if you treat people like babies, they will act like babies. It's as simple as that. I think this has been these insights are not my insights. It's a known fact that people will behave in the way you treat them.
I have a detailed question. How do you keep it transparent? Does everyone who goes somewhere need to bring back like a photo and a story and a quote, or tell what they were doing? How do you keep it transparent?
Well, so what we often do is so we have frequent gatherings in the mountains where we just go to the mountains in a hotel, and we make a little internal conference, and then sometimes people talk about what they have been doing. However, they're not obliged to do it. So basically, what I'm looking for is that they're constantly educating themselves in the things that are important for us. And if they do that, that's fine. They don't have to write a paper after having visited a conference or something.
So one thing I wonder is, because you're essentially, well, the name says House of Test, you're mostly software testers, but you don't actually work together most of the time. These people are sent out to client companies. So how do you build this feeling of being part of House of Test when they're lone soldiers?
That is a very tricky thing, because we don't even have an office. So it's kind of, I just started, actually today I started to look for an office, because now we're growing and it might make sense to have a more permanent place to also meet in person once in a while. So far we just rented some co-working space or some hotel when we had an event. But it might make sense to also have that. But it's true that in a company where everyone is just at the client, the cohesion within the company is something that you have to really take care of, that people don't feel more part of the client's company than of House of Test. And the way we do it is that it's also in our selection process of people, we are super selective. So currently the acceptance rate for new people is at 0.5%. So there are 200 applications that we get, and one person out of that 200 usually makes it into getting a contract. So there is this feeling for people to work for a really high quality company. That's first of all that. Then the second part is also that I always aim to issue contracts in a way that other companies can't match it. It's in terms of education, it's in terms of vacation allowance, just generally that there are hardly any approval processes within House of Test. And so that's how people feel very much part of that. Then another element is also that about 3 times we meet up in the mountains. We go to a nice hotel and we have this internal conference. where the social aspect plays a super important role. So we don't go to a cheap place, we go to a very nice place with good food, a nice spa, opportunities to also have walk in nature, and that way the cohesion is happening. At least I hope it is happening. But so far I have the impression that people at House of Test, they enjoy each other's company. And we have to balance somehow the the balance between having to do work with the client and also organizing something internally.
So are you equally selective about the clients, since this is the environment where your people mostly spend their time in?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's we have stopped working with some clients in the past. That has happened. This usually happens if the work is really more a low skill type of work that our people are not suitable for. So all the people working at House of Test, they have a software engineering background. They're solid engineers in what they're doing. And in testing, there are sometimes these projects where you just have to click around or fill in some forms. And that's not really what we want. Now, this is the nice theoretical view, of course. There is a business view as well. So it's kind of, we can't be over selective and then not having clients at all. But we definitely try to find interesting projects, and the way we position House of Test as an engineering company, being able to solve difficult technical problems. We also attract clients that actually have those sorts of problems. But it's not that all our people are always in a perfect project. So this would be delusional from my side. We sometimes also have difficult situations, and we try to resolve it in some way.
You already mentioned a bit about, I'm asking a stupid question for, I say, people who are dumb in our audience, but mostly it's just for myself because I don't really understand how these things work all that well. So tell me exactly, what is software testing and why do companies pay for that? Why is it something they need to outsource to somebody else?
Okay. Well, it's often companies think, oh no, testing is not needed because testing is something that just costs an additional amount of money. And maybe if our developers just, if they concentrated enough, they wouldn't do that many errors, or they can test it themselves. Now, this is fine if you build let's say, a software that, that displays cat pictures and it is not something safety relevant. One good approach would be to ask, can my software kill people? So, and if the answer is yes, you probably really want to test it well and see are there effects that are not desirable. So testing in general is kind of, there are like two big pillars of software testing. One is you need to check if it is actually able to do what it's supposed to do. So, let's say if you have a login screen, you need to be able to log in. That's one part. But then the much larger part of it is that you want to find out, does my software do anything that might not be desirable? That is a tricky area because the non-desirable behavior of software is an infinitely large field. And most of the undesirable parts you actually don't know. There are things that you will discover with good experimental design. Some people, they make also distinction between like automated software testing and something called manual software testing. I don't agree with that too much because the separation basically is an algorithmic approach, and that's the typical test automation. So basically you let algorithms work through the program and see whether or not an expectation is met or not. So this is often what can be automated. But then the other part is more something that is conducting experiment. So that's usually what's called manual testing. Often people work with something called test cases. They have step-by-step instructions on what they should do with the software. But the purpose there is that as a human agent, we have one big strength, and that is that with any situation that we encounter, we can do something meaningful. So we observe something and we can decide on the spot, might that be a problem, what I'm observing here or not? So we don't have to have an algorithmic set of decision-making rules in order to decide beforehand, before we actually run the test, to see is there anything problematic that we encounter. So we just observe something, and in the moment, we might see that, oh, this is not something that we have expected before, but this is certainly something that's wrong. So I can give you an example by Harry Collins, which is a sociologist in Wales. And so he also said that humans can answer questions that you have never heard before. So I can give you one of these questions, which is, can you fold a watermelon? So I'm sure you have never spent any thoughts on the possible answer of such a question, but I'm sure it took you like 0.1 seconds to be able to answer it. So even though you have never seen that question, you can do something meaningful with it. And that is the big strength of humans versus like machines. So if you have algorithmic testing, then basically you can only check against what it has been pre-coded for a possible answer but humans don't need that. So we can do something with that. So that's why the field of software testing also, in my view, is one of the super interesting one, because it combines engineering and psychology and sociology and all the different endeavors that humans are engaged in. So it encapsulates all of that.
Yeah, I've heard rumors from people close to you that you have rather strong opinions when it comes to qualifications on software testing. So this explains it a bit, I suppose, that there is no standard set of qualifications that can prove that you're a good software tester, or how would you
Well,
describe
yeah,
it?
there is. It's, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear here or use strong words. I don't know what's the wording
I
policy
guess
here.
we're okay with that. We haven't really talked about it, but yeah, let's go all
We
in.
can see Spotify or something strikes us immediately.
There is a
Well,
tick that where I can choose whether there's, bad language in it. So yeah, I can tick that one.
okay. So yeah, basically, I mean, there is a variety of bad ideas in testing. I mean, there is this 5-letter certification scheme, and that's utter bullshit. So this is only a money making scheme by very very savvy business people who knew how they can appeal to the HR departments of the world, and they're selling something that has absolutely no value. Then you mentioned Spotify. This is also one of the interesting things that companies, they want to implement the Spotify model into their software development cycle. And this is always a failure, because any sort of method or any sort of approach that companies have implemented is not only a strict description of a method, but it is rooted in the history and the development and the growth of the company. There are so many elements that make it work at, let's say, Spotify, and which would not make it work anywhere else. I think it's okay to be inspired by those models, but if you try to kind of implement one-to-one the same model in your company that another company has implemented in the course of many years and have always adapted, then this is prone to fail.
So what makes a good software tester? So how do you select this one person among the 200? What kind of questions do you ask, or what kind of tests how do you test your testers?
So, I mean, what I try to find is people who are, first of all, curious, in general, curious in the world. So I select very much people that have a wide variety of interests, that are just interested in all sorts of things. And also what I'm also asking people is, okay, what have they learned after their formal educations, when they have graduated at university? What have they done after that? If there's many things, that's a good indicator. And it actually doesn't matter what it is. It's just if people are generally interested in all sorts of things, that also means that they're very good at learning new facts and new matters. And this is also part of testing, that you need to learn a lot all the time. So that's one of them. But it's basically I think the character elements is curiosity and a good sense of humor. I think humor helps. And also the way you talk to people, because often as a software tester, you find something is not working, and then you have to tell the developer, okay, this here, it doesn't work. And basically that the message that you give there is that you tell somebody that their baby is ugly. And it's message that's difficult to convey. If you have to tell somebody that their baby is ugly, it is a tricky human interaction thing that you need to solve. And humor often is like this. It is like the grease in the mechanism that makes things flow very nicely. However, there's also another aspect, which is a sound technical foundation. So what I'm also looking for is if people have a very sound software engineering background. That doesn't mean that they have to have studied software engineering at university. So in our company, we also have people that study mathematics or physics. We also have people, they don't have a degree at all, but they have developed software for a couple of decades. It doesn't, for me, it's not that important that they have the formal paper proving that they have visited some university, but that they can actually prove by demonstrating that they can do the work. And so that's much more important.
I love that you brought out communication skills or the sense of humor or how they present themselves, because I think also in your business model, when you don't see your people that much, you don't spend that much time together every day, and they usually work for another company,
Yeah.
it's very important to trust their people skills or their,
Yeah. I've been burnt in the past, so it's kind of a couple of years back. We had a lot of business demand, and it's kind of felt suddenly very much rushed into hiring people, and I didn't pay attention on somebody's problematic behavior with people. So that has happened in the past, and that's not very nice, because it will have an influence on the reputation of the company.
Exactly. They are kind of the brand ambassador because you send them out to work with other people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, talking about brand and brand ambassadors, I mean, you're a consulting company, which first thing people think of is suits and, boring guys with suitcases coming and then sending a big bill afterwards and just messing up org chart or something. But you have a very different brand. You talk a lot about being rebels and being revolutionists. So what exactly are you revolutionizing and what are you rebelling against?
Well, revolutionizing the way testing is actually done, because most of the testing basically is based on these, certification schemes. It's overly formalistic and has the aim of producing a lot of paper and documents and reports and all that. And it's kind of any time you spend on creating some reports, you're not testing a product. And so what we try to optimize for is to spend as much time testing something and not kind of filling in some reports and all that. There are other flavors that we rebel against. This would be like companies that think, okay, we can automate everything. And that by definition is not possible. You can't automate everything because there's always a human involved. So human agency is also something that we put in front of everything, because it's not the machine doing the testing. The machine is a helper tool. It helps you achieve some of your goals much faster, and it helps you to achieve some of the goals much more accurately. But it's not the goal to automate everything. And it's also not the goal to produce just piles of documents. So in that sense, we try to be rebels and not implement the way testing is seen by a large majority of the organizations.
So I can definitely see from like an employee perspective how this brand and this idea, you talk a lot about the employees feeling good and being trusted. So that seems very appealing. I'm not surprised that you get a lot of applications and you get to be selective. And at the same time, I wonder how well does it work with the client? So is this brand something that helps you pre-select the right kind of clients as well? Or have you given it any thought? This is just who you are and clients either accept it or not? Or how much have you thought about it from like a marketing perspective, having this rebel thing being your brand?
So basically also our website, when people go on the website, they immediately get an impression that, okay, this is not the, white shirt and red tie and nice suit company that just comes in and delivers some PowerPoint presentations and then leaves the whole organization in a mess and then bills for a massive amount of money, but basically who really try to do something. It definitely helps to filter the prospective clients, but in general, it's kind of clients. At least in Switzerland, it's very much a person-to-person business. So we don't get clients because they just go to the website and then they give us a big contract. But it's me meeting and talking to people, and that's when they get an impression of how do we approach testing in general. And so then, of course, they can decide whether or not that is the right approach for them, and if it works. But it's not that House of Test does business with companies something. It's Ilari doing business with Peter, and they just both happen to have a company behind them. But it's Ilari and Peter trusting each other, and then it happens. It's not that you can just do some cold calls and kind of convince people to work with us.
So one thing that also I noticed, went through your website, of course, all the wordings. It's so nice to see somebody like put some thought into how you present yourself. And you yourself call yourself a cyborg-friendly humanist. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, it is. I've always been fascinated by like hard and soft sciences. Although soft sciences usually are much harder than the hard sciences because they are not so deterministic. It's initially I actually wanted to study physics, but then it's kind of because I couldn't afford it. So basically, studying physics is a full-time studying job, and I already had family, and so it's kind of didn't work. And then I studied linguistics and sociology, but I didn't finish. I don't have a degree in it because then I needed even more money and had to stop the studies. But later on, I also studied software engineering. That's something that I have as a postgraduate degree course. And I was always fascinated by both areas. I very much like physics and software engineering and all that. Like the nerdy stuff has always appealed to me. But I'm also super fascinated by languages overall. So languages is just an absolutely interesting area of human endeavor. And especially if you contrast that to like programming languages that need to be super deterministic, whereas human languages are by their core foundation, they're ambiguous. They need to be that. And they have a lot of not only like the literal meaning of words, but there's also a lot of there's this connotational meaning in speech, and there's irony, there's humor, and there's tongue-in-cheek speech, and then there's all these elements are fascinating, and software testing is something that combines all these areas. So that's why I find that a super interesting combination.
So I still don't see, where does the cyborg come into the picture? Is that?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. So by speaking, I forgot your question. So, no, cyborg-friendly and humanist. So that is a description of those both areas. So cyborg-friendly means that let's say if I could kind of implement or implant a chip in my eye that would display people's names, for instance, that would be very nice, or kind of give me some indication of where I should go. That would do that anytime. That's super interesting. But because I'm a human as well, and I'm fascinated by human psychology and how people behave and the reasons why they do something, and also kind of observing something that looks stupid, and then finding out, okay, why is that person doing that? Because nobody does something stupid on purpose. They have a reason for doing that. So it's like cyborg-friendly means that it's kind of, I like technology, I like gadgets, I like everything that's new, but I'm also very much rooted in humanity and just what humans do. And so humanist is also my perspective on the world in general, that it's we inhabit this world, we're humans, and we should put some focus on humans as well. It's not only technology, but like the combination of both is what is interesting.
Yeah, I also feel like they're not contrasting in a way that they're sometimes portrayed. I mean, you can use technology to connect with people. True, I mean, you could use technology to separate yourself from people, and I guess we end up doing that quite a lot, but it's not the only way it can be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
So when you talk about that, would you take that chip in your eye if that was available? Like, how far would you go in your cyborg fantasy?
So this is always like my fantasy. This the chip in the eye that gives me additional information. I would do that today. So if there was some possibility, I would go there immediately and have that implemented. Okay, interesting question about the limits. Okay, where would it stop? I think if there was a possibility to kind of upload my brain into an artificial entity, I'm not so sure if I would do that, because that basically would give me infinite years of life, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think the finiteness of human lives is a feature, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, if you could add a couple of years, but let's say if you lived infinitely, there wouldn't be any motivation to do anything, because if you don't do it today, you can do it in a million years. So why would I need to do anything today? There is no time scale that limits me, and like the mortality of humans is something that I think is not too bad a thing.
I've given that some thought myself as well. I've been fascinated, like uploading myself shortly before death. I haven't made up my mind on that. I don't think I actually have the choice right now, but if I were given the choice, I'm not certain what I would do. I'm definitely intrigued by it. I feel like I'm not ready to die, but at the same time, I presume the human life naturally sort of builds you up towards it. So when I'm 80 or 90, then I might think differently.
Yeah, I mean, uploading your brain also takes away the curiosity of what happens afterwards. Maybe there's nothing and then it doesn't matter neither, because then you don't care anymore, because then you go, and then everything is gone. But maybe there is something interesting on the other side, or I don't know what it is. So and just by kind of living forever, you might rob yourself of an interesting experience.
One thing that is becoming a reality is Neuralink. Would you consider getting yourself some of these Elon Musk implants in your brain? That's already happened once.
Yeah, I don't think I would do that immediately. I mean, Elon Musk is a fascinating person. However, I don't think he tests things adequately in a way that prevents the worst from happening. So I would probably be a bit careful with that. It's also one of the reasons I don't drive a Tesla, because I think their implementation of the autopilot is quite ruthless. It is so the autopilot is a fascinating problem because it has to deal with an infinite amount of possible situations, and I don't see a way to deal with that 100%. So that's why also kind of autonomous driving is not much developing nowadays. It's kind of there's not that much progress, and we're not there that you can just sit in the car and tell the car to go home and it does everything by itself. It's not a solved problem.
So would you like to work with Tesla or some other company and help them test their solutions a bit better?
Oh, for sure. That would be fascinating. Yeah. I mean, but if I had the choice for any of the companies of Elon Musk, it would probably be more his rockets. So SpaceX would then be my choice. That would be fascinating. Yeah.
Not Neuralink. You wouldn't test it with your own brain.
Oh, test it definitely. Well, any of Elon's things I would test. So Elon, if you're listening, just give me a call.
All right. Excellent. Ave, did you have anything?
Oh, good. Thanks.
So let's dig a bit more about your personal background. So we've gotten deep into your philosophy already, and you already tipped a bit like House of Test was founded in 2015, or this iteration of it is from 2015, but you had some collaborations and... Oh, you're getting a call. Say hi from us. So what's your path? How did you end up doing what you do now? How did you end up having this particular iteration of House of Test? What had to happen in Ilari's life to get you in that point?
Well, I mean, there's always the kindergarten years where people want to become like a train driver or astronaut or something like that, and it's kind of the well, maybe that would be also guidance for young people, is that don't start to think what you really want to do until you're at least 30 years old and just float along. But I've always been fascinated by many things. It's kind of like when I was very young, I'm still an introvert, but I was a very introverted little boy and just very bookish and reading a lot and doing that. And so it's kind of basically what I wanted to be very early was like a physicist. So that's what I thought. Okay, so this is that's the foundation of what the world is built of. So that's what I wanted to be. But I mean, I started just with an apprenticeship, so this was like kaufmännischer Angestellter. So this is what I did immediately. Then after that, I worked in an airplane. I was a flight attendant for 6 months. Just serving coffee and tea. Then after that, I worked for an import-export company. Was also driving some trucks. Then I went to South America for almost a year, just traveling around with a backpack and long hippie years. So that was a very great time. Also, one of the recommendations for everyone, if you have the chance, take a year off and just go traveling somewhere. These are the experiences that are most important to see, that things are not the way they are as you see them, but many different areas of the world have a different view on many things and very foundational things. Yeah, and then I studied at so I did like the A levels in order to be able to study at the university. Then I started studying sociology, where I got in a lot of fights because they had also this quantitative approach by just statistical analysis. I didn't like that at all. I got into fights with professors about that, and then I found it much more interesting in the linguistics department, which was like my minor part of the studies. But then I had to stop that. But that's not a problem. I needed money, so then that's how I got into software testing. I was young and I needed the money. That's how I ended up in what I'm doing nowadays. That was in 2004 with a company called Phonak. They do hearing instruments, and basically they just needed somebody for 3 days to set up PC machines. Then these 3 days, they became 7 years. In that time, I also built up a whole testing department. I got into contact with many people in the testing world, started to speak at conferences, and then changed to eBay. I was with eBay for 3 years, where I spent my time mostly on airplanes. So basically, I was on the airplane every week. I was just flying around within Europe or to the US. And then after that was House of Test. So that's basically the short thing. And then of course there's the private life, which is very private. So that's in the background. But I have a family with kids and a dog, that's where I also spend a lot of time.
So you did a bunch of very different things. Do you feel like House of Test is now sort of where you landed? Is this your future going forward, or is this just another step on the way to something completely different?
Well, that also is very difficult to say. I mean, in general, I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing right now. Who knows in 5 years? So, like the typical question, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? How the hell do I know? Maybe there's an asteroid hitting Earth and we're all dead. So what that would be actually the perfect answer. So if I asked somebody and somebody told me that, okay, yes, you're hired. No, I have no idea what happens in 5 years. I could picture myself sometimes in the future also helping people to build good organizations that are both profitable and also places where people really want to work. So I think I have some practical and empirical experience on how to build that.
You're going to make it very difficult for our format in this podcast, because usually our very last question is, what will the world look like 10 years from now? So we are already going to get a very evasive answer from you.
Well, no, you could approach it in different ways. I have an interesting book from the German Socialist Republic, and it's from the early 80s, and it talks about DDR im Jahr 2000. So it's like how would the Socialist Republic look in the year 2000? And it's quite predictable, because they all then have flying cars, and everything is bigger and faster and nicer. And that's the way I observe often people talking about, okay, how will testing look in 5 years? Nowadays, of course, everything is with artificial intelligence. So basically, they just take whatever is there and amplify what's there. However, what often happens is that something unexpected enters the world, and there's no way of us knowing that and what the impact of that new thing should be. You can best observe it in politics. I mean, like, let's say 5 years ago, who would have thought that Russia is just kind of invading a democratic country and slaughtering people there? And then suddenly all the companies are rebuilding their armies, whereas they thought in the 90s, okay, that's the end of history, and now we don't have to do that. So things change, and it is quite a fascinating thing that telling what's happening in 10 years is very much impossible.
Well, I very much like the quote, and I can't remember from who it is because I always forget these things, but that future is not something to interpret, it's something to make, which is also why we're kind of called future makers. So considering, yes, obviously we can't know exactly what's going to happen, but we do have some ideas of what we want to happen and what we try to make happen. So is there something that you yourself are trying to contribute to that you would like to see being reality 10 years from now?
Well, just in the small field of software testing, I would love it to evolve in a way that people have a good picture of, okay, what is actually good testing? And the trouble right now is that everyone feels competent in saying, okay, how testing works. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So people go for these bad ideas that are proposed by some organizations. So that's one thing in testing. In terms of just general humanity, I think it would be a very good idea to now start to focus on what's happening with global warming. So this is not something; it's a climate catastrophe that's unfolding. Trouble there is that as an individual person, there's not that much that you can do. It is nations in combination with other nations that need to come to the conclusion: okay, now we need to stop certain things. Otherwise, we'll just boil to death, and I don't think this is an outcome that we would desire for.
I'm jumping back to the detail before, you mentioned the book about DDR, what it would look like in 2000. I'm curious, what's the name of it? I want to check it out. I'm married to someone who was born and lived in DDR, so I have this little touch on what it might have been like.
I
Flying
think it's
Trabants,
called
perhaps?
Die Deutsche Demokratische Republik im Jahre 2000.
Okay. I'll look that up. That sounds fun.
And it's, I mean, you might find it on Abe Books or something, some antiquarian books portals.
All right. Ave, did you have anything to add here? Anything to ask?
As much as I love talking about socialism and climate, which are some of my favorite topics, I have one topic that's like on top of it, which is dogs. What kind of dog do you have and what's their name?
So her name is Sora, which means sky in Japanese. I only found that out later, but it was just like the S. It was the S generation, so we had to choose a name with S. And she's a German Shepherd.
Nice.
And,
okay, thank you.
She's a very lovely dog. Yeah.
I bet.
All right. It sounds like we're done. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for all the thoughtful answers, Ilari.
Thank you very much for having me.
And let me just read our outro right away. I was going to cut away all this part of my meta talk. Maybe not. Let's keep it in. Let's keep all the meta talk in.
Well, you see, that was also the reason why I did not want to have the questions beforehand, because it would sound like too polished, and it's kind of, I don't know if you know these podcasts that come across super polished. It makes me suspicious, and it's kind of like having some elements in there that are not so polished. I think that just adds to the quality of a podcast.
Definitely. I do agree on that. I noticed, like, we interview a lot of young people as well, let's say first-time founders, and they tend to be more nervous than people who've already had a bit more decades behind in their lives. So sometimes it makes them easier to, like, they know what they're talking about. They feel they have their expertise in hand. So it's it's one way to do it. Well, I also would like a bit more spontaneity into our podcast, but I don't know. We'll have to figure out. We're on the way of learning to do this very well ourselves. But I was very happy when you said that you specifically don't want to see the questions in advance. That's when I went to our mutual acquaintance and asked him what would be the tough questions to ask to surprise him. And I got the tip about this 5-letter certification. It wasn't IQSTD, but that was one fun website as well.
So IQSTD, that was actually that was founded by me.
Okay. He just sent me the link and said this relates to the topic. Okay.
Well, that was me and Matt Barcom. That was in 2014. So 10 years ago, or 13. Some 10 years ago. And we basically just made fun of the 5-letter certification scheme and came up with something. So if people want to check out iqstd.org, that is a much better scheme, I find.
Yes, and fabulous website design, I have to admit. Just go ahead and check it out.
We had 100 people design crew, kind of, coming up with ideas, and kind of then we implemented the best one. And it is really, it's a very, very chic website, I find.
Yes, I agree. All right. I think we're going to stop right now here because we have to stop at some point. We could continue forever, but we have some actual other things to do. So once again, thank you, Ilari, for the conversation. Thank you, Ave, for taking care of us and making sure that we actually record something here. And of course, thank you to our audience for listening to us. And if you like hear stories for people who make the world a better place through science and technology, you're in luck because there is more. So make sure to subscribe to the Future Makers podcast, for example, on Spotify or YouTube or whatever these places exist. Until next time.